how can you free yourself of years of mom guilt, even if you've been dealing with it for decades? How can you finally love yourself after having one too many kids? This episode, I'm going to share with you how you can do exactly that. If you're a woman who's on a path of healing and transformation, it's time to live your heart out. My name is Nancy Ma, and I'm a physiotherapist, a family woman, and a dreamer just like you. Join me each week as I share a way of living where you'll feel more alive, vibrant, and free. Hi, my name is Nancy Ma. I am a physiotherapist, life coach, and a mom of two kids who are almost 6 and 9. And I have had years of mom guilt, but I've had it even well before they were born. So when I was a kid, I had a mom who really resented having me. And I know that sounds harsh, and my mom loves me so much. But when I was born, my mother, she wanted to go back to work. She didn't want to have me. She got married at 25 and wanted to go back to school. And when it was basically, she told my dad, this is my plan, I'm going back to school. He got her pregnant right away. And she had me, 10 months later. And when it was time for her to go back to work, she had prepared, for me to go to this daycare center. She had packed my dad's lunch, and she was all set for me to go to this daycare. And then my dad wouldn't get out of bed, and she's trying to wake him up. She's like, "What are you doing? Why aren't you getting to bed? Why going to work?" And he was like, "Well, if you're going to work, what's the point of having kids? I might as well stay at home." And so obviously my dad was the breadwinner. It didn't make sense financially for my dad to stay at home. So my mom ended up having to call her work with a lame excuse to say why she couldn't go back after maternity leave. And she ended up staying home with me. And I felt that resentment growing up. I felt my mom really wanting this other life that she didn't have. She worked so that she can be able to go back to school and be a teacher like she always wanted. And I just knew that my mom had dreams of doing something other than what her situation was, which was being a young mom at home with me. And I felt that pressure growing up of having to be this perfect kid who did really well in school, who helped my mom out, and who behaved very well. And it seemed like nothing I ever did was good enough for her, and nothing ever really made her happy. And as a kid, I didn't know that it wasn't my fault. But, I worked really hard to try to make my mom happy. And that wasn't fair to me as a kid, because I was just a kid and I didn't know better. And, not until I became a mom myself did I understand how hard it was for my mom to know that she had struggled like that. She didn't tell me that story till, I had my first daughter almost 9 years ago. And when she told me, I just felt so heartbroken for her that she had this big dream for herself, and it was my fault, so to speak, that she couldn't live this life. And when I had graduated school, I worked really hard, focused on academics. That's what my mom wanted for me. She wanted me to go to school and live this life that she didn't have. That's why she really pushed me in the academia world. And when I became a physiotherapist, I started working with people who have pain. This is why people come to see me in my practice, is they want to know how to heal from pain. And I started to really be able to help them and understand people's pain. But what I really understood was that people just weren't living the lives that they were meant to live. And I knew that if I wanted to help them, I had to start being the role model. It wasn't good enough for me to tell people that they needed to exercise more. I actually had to do that myself. And so I had, a very balanced and beautiful life. I traveled a lot with my husband. I worked out at the gym. I had a group of friends that I was really close to. I had like the perfect life until I had my daughter. 9 years ago. And, we had planned for her. So it wasn't like my situation with my mom where she wasn't planning to have a child so early. I had my daughter at 30 and we were ready emotionally to have her. But I didn't know how this other life was going to fit into the life that I had. I had this perfectly balanced life. I was healthy, I was active, I had friends, I had an amazing job where I get to help people. And I didn't know how I was going to have this perfect balanced life with the child in it. And when I was on maternity leave, I just obviously I fell in love with her. And the mom guilt came pouring in. I wanted to do everything right by her. I wanted to give her everything that I didn't have. And the one thing that I didn't have, because I did have a lot of love. I don't want to shed any, negative light on my mom. I knew in my heart that my mom loved me so much and she didn't know better and she didn't mean to make me feel guilty as a child growing up. She didn't do that on purpose. She just felt trapped. But I felt so much love from my parents. My parents loved me so much. They sacrificed so much for me and my brother. And I knew that. And that's why I wanted so badly to make them happy. I wanted so bad for them to be proud of me. And that's what I lacked from my parents, from my mom specifically. And growing up, I'm Asian. In our culture, we don't tell our kids that we love them and that we're proud of them, because that will make them soft. And my parents wanted to harden me because they had a hard life. And so when I had my daughter, I wanted, of course, to just like every single parent wants for the child, I wanted her to be happy. I wanted her to be healthy. And I wanted her to feel so much love, but I didn't want her to feel that guilt and that pressure growing up from trying to make me happy. And I knew that because I didn't want her to have that burden, that pressure, I had to figure out a way to make myself happy. I had to figure out how to live the life that I wanted so that my daughter could learn how to love herself. My daughter could learn how to travel the world and live her whole life, not being attached to my expectations of her. I wanted to free her of that burden. And I had to do that for myself. I had to learn how to do that as an adult, as a 30-year-old woman. How do I free myself from these chains? And that's why it, to me, is so important to learn to love yourself, to free yourself of the mom guilt. And it's not just for us, because as moms, as parents, it's so that we can role model that behavior and that lifestyle for our children. Sometimes I talk to moms and they feel angry because they have this guilt, because we think it subconsciously makes us a better mom. That if we go and do something for ourselves, but at least if we feel bad about it, then at least we have some sort of conscience, right? But sometimes I talk to these moms who just feel so guilty. They can't even fathom what it would look like to take care of themselves. Like, that is just beyond comprehension, because they've just lived their entire lives, like my mother, for their child or children. And then so these moms that I talk to in my practice, they come to see me and they just get angry and they say, well, this nonsense about self-love, how could I have time? Like, who else is going to take care of all the things for their kids? The extracurricular activities, the healthy eating, all this stuff. Who's going to do that if I don't do that as a mom? And we set ourselves up for failure, right? But let me get back to that point about why they're angry. They're angry because they don't think it's possible, that they think it's nonsense. And I get that because there's a lot of pressure for moms to do all the things, and parents, but specifically moms. And yeah, I get it, I'm biased, but they feel angry because they don't see a way that that's possible. And they think that the only way it's possible is by being completely selfish and running off and being a wanderlust or whatever, and traveling the world and leaving their kids home to be taken care of by the dog. So like that's what they think, that if you take care of yourself and if you love yourself, that means that you're neglecting your children. And that is just such a false premise, because just because you take care of yourself, it's not two mutually exclusive events. You don't take care of yourself and then your kids are starving on the streets somewhere being raised by like God knows who. No, you take care of their basic needs. Of course, you make sure that they're healthy, or that they have food, and that they are somewhat stimulated, but that shouldn't be at the expense of our health. And that's I get why that they're angry, because they think they need to do all the things. And that is the myth, because it's not possible for it to lie completely on our shoulders to take care of all the things. It's not possible. It's because we want our kids to have all the things that we didn't have. And I'm lucky that I actually didn't have very much. I'm lucky that I grew up without any extracurricular activities because my parents couldn't afford it. I didn't grow up with that much affection and love, not because they didn't have that for me. I knew in my heart that they did. They just didn't know how to show it. I grew up with no video games or toys because we couldn't afford it. So that's why I just know like our kids don't need that much. And so when we believe these myths that, our kids need this amount of extracurricular times and this amount of artwork and this amount of dance class and all this stuff, and it's like, of course we're overwhelmed, of course we're angry because there's no time for self-care, because we set ourselves up to have no time. And I say that I'm lucky that I didn't have very much, because I believe that I'm a well-functioning person without that much. So kids really do need to know that they're loved. And if you can just do that, if you just show them that you love them and you tell them you love them, that is enough. That is way more than enough. And even though my parents didn't tell me in so many words, I felt their love. And so as long as kids know that they're enough and that they're loved, it's okay if they eat junk food sometimes. It's okay that they get screen time sometimes. It's okay if they don't have any extracurricular activities. That is actually a gift, to give them boredom, to give them opportunity to learn something new. We are just so busy trying to keep up with all the things for our kids that we have no time. And this is why it's unfathomable to love ourselves, and it's unfathomable to release ourselves from that pressure. But it is possible. It is possible. A lot of times people ask me that, how do I start putting myself first after years of not doing it? And they've gotten to the point where they know that they're ready, that they are pretty much burnt out or walking a very fine line. So really taking time, I would start with just taking time for yourself. It doesn't happen where you are, so busy living this life, just feeling terrible. And then you go to this perfect, beautiful life on the other side, and you step into some portal, and then you're on the other side of this as a free woman. It does take time, but think of it as an adventure, is that it's an explorative process, and you want to really explore it with a sense of curiosity, like you're going on an adventure. The first thing I would do is really just sit down with yourself and take time with yourself to figure out what it is you want and who you are, because we are just so busy with all the clutter in our life, whether that's in your actual environment with things taking up physical space, or whether that's clutter in our environment and or our calendar. We just have so many things to do all the time, and we're so busy trying to figure that out that we're distracted by all of that clutter, and we don't really know who we are and what we want. Because when people come to me because they have pain or they're whether physical or emotional, and they're just stuck in a rut. They don't know where to start because they don't know what they want. So if you can make time for yourself with a journal or some quiet space, going for a walk, somewhere where you can just start to really explore what you want, that is a great start. And I just want to add one thing about that is that it doesn't have to be something crazy. Like you don't have to have some life passion where you're going to travel the world, you're going to climb Mount Everest. It doesn't have to be crazy like that. It's just start with the simple things you want in life. Another question that I get is that, people, moms specifically, they see kind of this time travel where they can look into the future at their mom and know that they don't want to end up like her. And no offense to the older moms, it's, and I get it. I look at my own mom and there's lots of things I love about her, but there are certain ways she's lived her life that I wouldn't necessarily follow. And one of those things is to live a life completely that sacrificing for your children. And, but sometimes some other moms can look at their moms, their older moms, and say, okay, they're not healthy anymore. They're kind of bitter. They're resentful. They have low energy. They didn't get to check things off the bucket list. How do I not end up like her? I think that if you're already asking that question, or if you can be aware that that is likely your future, if you don't make a change, that's already a great start. Because most people end up in places where they don't want to be because they aren't aware of where they are at now, and they don't set a conscious intention to get somewhere else. So if you see the situation your mom is in, and you're aware of that, and you are aware that you don't want to end up like her, that's a great start. And it's still going back to what is it that you want instead of that, because if you just focus on what you see, you're going to move towards that. We end up moving in the direction that we focus on. So you see that, you want to avoid that. So what is it that you want? How do you see your life being when you're 60 or 80? And focus on that. And when you can do that with a conscious intention, a heart-centered intention, you're going to get more of that. Sometimes the moms I work with just don't have a supportive partner, and they ask me, so how could this all sounds great? Yeah, self-love sounds great when you have support, but how can I do this when I'm flying solo, or if my husband's just not that into it? And for sure, there's no doubt about it that when you don't have the support system at home, that does make it more challenging. And so my heart does definitely go out to the moms out there who are doing this on their own. But there is a lot of support out there, even if you don't have the husband or partner at home. We're not completely on our own. We have a network of moms. There's moms just have this language where we just understand each other. So just reaching out to a support network where you can talk about your struggles, and you'll be met with people and other moms or parents who understand your situation. And I think that's just a big part of the struggle, is that we just don't feel understood and we feel like we're alone. So how you can get support is simply by asking. And I know that is so hard for people, but even just posting something on Facebook where you ask a question for help, and you'd be surprised at the amount of help that comes pouring in, because you'll feel supported, you'll feel loved. And I get that can be obviously more superficial when you're just on social media, but reaching out for help from a friend who can talk to you about what you're going through and maybe help you navigate some things that you might not have thought of, or even hiring help of getting a babysitter, or setting up play dates. I love play dates for help because kids just kind of play by themselves and they take care of themselves. And there's lots of ways to get support, but you can't get any support if you don't ask for it. So that's a really good place to start, just realizing that you need help and just putting it out into the ether, putting it on the universe and saying, hey, I am struggling. I need help. I want some me time. How can I get this? And I promise you, you will be surprised at the amount of help you can get and will get. And you can make time for self love if you make it a priority. Even when you've made time for yourself, and even when you know that you deserve it, there's still going to be that self that guilt that creeps in, and we say to ourselves, okay, but I just want my kids to be happy and healthy. How do I do that and still do the self-love? I know I need it, but how do I do both at the same time? And that is a very real problem. And when I say that you can be free of the mom guilt and you can love yourself while still loving your children, that doesn't mean that you'll never experience any guilt again, because I certainly do feel it sometimes, because it's been brainwashed in us, and it's maybe even inherited. I don't know. But this guilt does creep back into our psyche. And, I just did my first solo travel. I did a retreat in Mexico and I had an amazing time, and I still felt the guilt. And it's not to say that as I said, you'll be completely free of the guilt, but when you have it, you can let it go, and you can still do what you want to do. You can still do what you want to do, and you can still travel, go to the spa, read a book by the fire, whatever your version of self-love looks like. Um, you just don't let the guilt stop you from doing it. And so how do you still do those things and still make your kids' health and happiness a priority? Is that knowing this one very key thing. It's, well, I heard this quote once, and I believe it's Carl Jung who says, the greatest tragedy of a child is the unlived life of her mother. And that is just so, doesn't it just get you right in your heart? How your child or children can be happy and healthy is for you to learn to be happy and healthy. Because when you walk into your kid's room and you're full of joy and you are full of great energy, that is going to permeate, and that's going to be contagious. And your kids are going to feel that, and they are going to feel happier and healthier as a result. So knowing that, as again, when you do your own thing, that doesn't mean that you're neglecting your children. It just means that you are also taking care of yourself. You can still take care of your kids at the same time. You can still make sure that they eat as healthy as possible, given your circumstances, but it is possible only if you learn to be happy and healthy yourself. Often when, clients are coming to me, they're saying, okay, I hear what you're saying, Nancy, about the mom guilt. I am ready to be free of it. I'm ready to not let it hold me back. I understand that it might work its way into my consciousness sometimes, but I am ready to take care of myself, and I feel worthy, and I feel I'm ready. But how do I do that? And what is my next step? And this is, the first step is always the hardest, right? It's overcoming that inertia of wanting to stay the same. And I get it. It's hard. And the first step is the most challenging, the biggest step. And but once you do it, you can keep going with that momentum. And I did allude to it earlier, and the first step is really taking time for yourself and figuring out what it is you want, and making space for yourself to do that, making time and space, carving out some time in your schedule to sit by yourself in a decluttered environment where you can journal, where your mind can wander, and you can start to figure that out. And that is a very big challenge for moms. Even though they're creating time and space, it can be confusing when you're not used to it, to really figure out what you want. And at this point, if it is really challenging, that's when I would say to get the right help is important. Not just for free yourself of mom guilt, but to see a bigger and better life for yourself, to not just settle for surviving, but to really live the life that you want for you, to go beyond going to the spa and getting your nails done. It's really about creating a life that you're proud of, where you're fully living and feeling vibrant, and you're feeling like you're living your heart out. And that's what I'm all about, is that you want to live your heart out so that you can show your kids how to do that. And when I work with clients, they can get so trapped in just putting their head down and not seeing beyond the box of the roles that were put in. And so I would say getting the right help and working with a coach who can help you live that life that you want to live, or doing something completely for yourself, going on a retreat. I run retreats from my home, and it's such an important thing to do, to remove yourself from the regular environment. And so what a retreat does is you can learn to figure out who you are and what you really want when you're in an environment that's away from your regular day-to-day. So whether you do something for the day for yourself, where you're somewhere far away and you can see clearly, you can have a completely different perspective, you can be challenged, you can have a new perspective, and you can come home a happier, healthier, more vibrant version of yourself. And as I say too, it's like going on retreats, kind of like going to rehab. Like everybody leaves rehab sober, so everybody leaves a retreat happier and healthier, more vibrant. And but then you go back into your regular life, and you can't figure out how to make all those pieces work. You've learned all these things on the retreat, but how do you incorporate that into your regular life? And this is where working with the right coach is important, because a right coach for you can help you figure out, take what you learned on a retreat or whatever you're learning for self-love and to live the life that you want and your goals and all that, and make that fit in your lifestyle, or help you transition or transform your lifestyle. And so, working with the right coach can really help you navigate that if you can't figure that out on your own. And sometimes it can be challenging to figure things out on your own. We're not supposed to do everything on our own and by ourselves. And this is part of the challenge of why we have all this mom guilt, is because we think we're supposed to do everything, and we think we're supposed to do it on our own. So really, that's where I would start. And if you feel like you are ready to finally free yourself of the mom guilt, I hope that you really took these questions and these perspectives to heart today. I have more tools and resources on my website, liveyourheartout.com, and I hope to see you again on the next video.